Watch this.
It's been 50 years since it collapsed, but could we soon see the Teton Dam rebuilt? The demand for water is calling for the consideration of another try, or at least a continuation of the conversation.
Let's move this forward. Let's not drag our feet. We don't have time to drag our feet anymore. We got to get things going.
You know, Idaho's past has shown a pretty progressive lean when it comes to women, from state seals to ballot boxes. An historical fact now getting a museum-level spotlight at the Secretary of State's office.
Part of our seal is recognizing that the stature of the woman is the same height as the man, and that was intentional when she created her original painting.
Idaho's water crisis has state lawmakers hightailing it out of the gem state. Not necessarily looking for greener pastures, but rather swamping ones, if you will. Dozens of lawmakers and members of Idaho's ag community went to Washington, D.C., asking Congress for help to build something that hasn't been built since, well, Jimmy Carter was a president. That'd be a dam, but not just a new one. Rebuilding an old one, a dam that catastrophically collapsed mere months after it was built the very first time. We're going to get more on that in a moment, but first, Hunter Funk breaks down this latest proposal.
This is our really first time when the group got together in D.C. was today.
Nearly 50 years after the Teton Dam collapsed and wiped out entire communities, some of those same communities are now part of a new push to possibly resurrect it.
In our group here that have come, we have the mayor of Sugar City and the mayor of Rexburg. And those are the two areas that were most devastated by the Teton Dam. But as representatives of those areas, they also recognize the importance of doing something. And we're not here to necessarily say, let's go tomorrow. But like Senator Cook said, we need to get the ball rolling. We need to get the conversations started.
These three lawmakers say they gathered 5,000 signatures showing support for Senate Joint Memorial 101, which urges federal and state agencies to update existing studies and explore new water storage projects.
Part of that is to get us to start looking at building new reservoirs and dams, and increasing the height, raising the height of the dam of existing dams like American Falls Dam, Minidoka, Jackson Dam. So we're looking at that, and then possibly rebuilding the Teton Dam.
So it's not just rebuilding the Teton Dam, but expanding existing ones. These legislators are meeting with Idaho's congressmen in D.C. in hopes to get the support to allow the Bureau of Rec to begin studying these areas so they can find which projects would make the most sense. They're also meeting to streamline the permit process and eventually ask for federal funds.
One of the things we've kind of coined is 750K by 2100.
That's 750,000 acre-feet of new surface storage of water by the year 2100.
We're not looking at, 5, 10, 15 years out. We're looking at 75, 50 years out to say, what can we get in the project line and get stuff started that maybe it will take us 50 years or 60 years to get it finished, but that's okay. Let's get it started today.
This is just another step in our determination to manage this resource into the future. We feel like that the steps we take today will have a big impact into perpetuity.
Increasing water storage would allow water managers to increase winter flow, but it's also an ongoing concern for advocates for downstream fisheries. The group says it's not only a way to keep the water flowing in eastern Idaho as snowpack shrinks and summers stretch longer and hotter.
This will help us to provide us water for those junior water rights that keep getting turned off. This is the third or fourth year in a row that we have turned off water before they were through watering. We shut them down. So this effort is to stop that. Let's move this forward. Let's not drag our feet. We don't have time to drag our feet anymore. We got to get things going.
Okay, there's been a few of these, but if you look at just the Teton Dam cost to build, a 2015 study by the Bureau of Rec and Idaho Water Resource Board showed it would cost $490 million to build. And the group says the longer it gets pushed aside, the more the costs go up for expanding Idaho's water storage. Now, I did reach out to Representative Mike Simpson, who they met with today. He said in a statement, quote, "We all recognize the importance of preserving water, and it is essential that we continue productive discussions about these ideas." He goes on to say he will continue to support legislation that bolsters Idaho's ability to manage our water resources effectively, end quote. correct.
Okay, so how does he mesh this with his earlier proposal to get rid of dams along the
Right.
Snake River?
I think, when I was having the conversation, at least with these legislators, they were talking about, well, salmon doesn't go all the way southeast
Sure.
of Idaho. So that's kind of one of the things that kind of goes from the Shoshone Falls on. So I think that's a more positive side, but it did sound like Simpson is kind of cautiously moving forward.
Yeah, you mentioned a 2015 study. There was a 2012 survey done back then about rebuilding the Teton Dam, and I think it was done by American Rivers, which is a conservation group, of course, but they said 45% were in favor of rebuilding it, 34% were opposed. So kind of a not really considerable either way.
Yeah, and if you're talking to farmers, they're probably going to be on board because their water keeps getting turned off.
Sure.
So.
All right, we'll
Yeah.
see. Again, long time in the future. Thanks, Hunter. Well, this hasn't been the first time the state has considered rebuilding the Teton Dam. Access to water has always been an issue in Idaho. Back in 2008, lawmakers passed two pieces of legislation that would look at ways to increase our storage capacity. Both would set aside nearly $2 million to study two things. One would be raising the Minidoka Dam by 5 feet, which you kind of heard mentioned there, to increase the capacity by 67,000 acre feet. And two, well, they're going to replace the collapsed Teton Dam. In 2009, the results of that study showed it would cost $205 million to raise Minidoka Dam and another $550 million to replace the Teton. So that number was higher in 2009 than it was in 2015. But both were too much to consider seriously at the time of that study. So because of that, the conservation group I also mentioned, American Rivers, they listed the Teton River, which is a tributary of the Snake, as one of America's most endangered rivers in 2010, and they have been trying to get it listed as wild and scenic, which would protect it from a new dam at any time. Well, as for the old one, it was a man-made disaster unlike any we've seen in the Gem State nearly 50 years ago. It took almost 4 years to build.
The water that cascaded down through there was unbelievable.
And mere hours to collapse.
About 300 feet of water in depth at that time, more than 300 feet. And it began to come through. I think at first it came through about a 60-foot wall, then 100 feet, and finally the whole dam on the north side gave way. And it's a scene that it just took your breath, and you wondered what's going to happen downstream.
What happened downstream was a wall of water that left the collapsed Teton Dam at 1 million cubic feet per second, hitting some places at least 30 feet high. By 8 p.m., the flow of water had nearly stabilized, but not before essentially destroying the communities of Rexburg and Sugar City. In the end, 11 people were killed, along with scores of livestock. It caused more than $400 million in property damage. Damages and death that could have been prevented. From 1972 to 1975, crews built the earthen Teton Dam 12 miles northeast of Rexburg in eastern Idaho. At 305 feet high, the reservoir it would create was supposed to provide flood control, hydropower, and supplemental irrigation water for more than 111,000 acres of farmland in the upper Snake River Valley. Finally finished, they began to fill it, a foot at a time in the fall of 1975. The following spring runoff doubled that rate, eventually rising to 4 feet a day. By early June, inspection crews found a couple of weak spots in the dam where water was seeping through. But as the water kept rising behind it, those spots were considered minor. That is, until 11:52 a.m., June 5th.
Put my son and my daughter in the car. They were 8 and 10, and we drove to Rexburg. We had 20 minutes warning, and my daughter looked in the rearview mirror, and she says, "Mother, look out the rearview mirror. You can see the water going across the road."
The collapse flooded 300 square miles. Homes and cars were carried away by the floodwaters, leaving 2/3 of Rexburg residents homeless. The water took 3 days to reach American Falls, some 70 miles away, where it stopped because of another dam already in place. Investigators later determined that the collapse was due to a series of design and construction flaws. Human error. Today, the spillway and the unmoved mound of dirt remain, a reminder of water's power and the tragic events of 45 years ago. Well, the Boise-based Morrison Knutson Company was awarded the $40 million contract to build the Teton Dam. MK was absolved of any blame, though, in the collapse, since the flaw was with the design, not the construction, but putting it all together led to that. Between the 100,000 acres of land and floodwaters ran over, including the lost rangeland, To the 32 miles of railway, the destruction of hundreds of homes and businesses, it was estimated those damages were higher than the $400 million. They reached as high as $2 billion, some say, with the federal government paying out nearly $400 million in claims. After that day, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation instituted the Dam Safety Program, which is now being used as worldwide standard for every new dam built. The first resolution of Idaho's first state legislature, right after it first became a state in 1890, created the committee that would come up with the first state seal. So the committee created a contest, and it was won by an art student from Stockton, California, who just stopped in Boise and decided, well, this would be a good place to plant herself. Well, Miss Emma Edwards Green's idea, adopted as the state seal in March of 1891, has certainly rooted itself in Idaho history. Still the first and only such seal designed by a woman. And that seal, and another rediscovered piece of history, share something more than the space they now occupy. Here's Joe Paris.
An unveiling transformed a government office wall into a learning exhibit, all centered on a seal.
In Idaho's Constitution, I serve as the keeper of the Great Seal of the state of Idaho. It's one of those obscure roles of the
Secretary of State Phil McGrain is known for elections and business topics, but the job comes with a list of things people don't see, like seals.
Anything the governor signs, I sign, and we affix the seal to. So from executive orders to proclamations, it's a regular part of our job. But one of the cool things today is to really highlight our state seal and its significance in history.
Idaho Seal is unique.
The only state seal that was created by a woman, Emma Edwards Green. And this exhibit is a tribute to her and her work and the details of our seal.
The details of the art tell a story.
Part of our seal is recognizing that the stature of the woman is the same height as the man, and that was intentional when she created her original painting. And so you'll see here a tribute to Emma Edwards Green, a tribute to the spirit of Idaho women. All of it kind of comes together to really just highlight this moment in history. You could see the contrast between the seal we know today and that really everyone is familiar with versus her original work well before Idaho, when we were just getting our beginning. And so one of the things we wanted to highlight was doing a recreation of her original painting that our state seal is based off of, and that really we used for, I think it was almost 75 years before it was redone in the 1950s to the seal we know today.
History was also uncovered on this topic. Becky Funk, president of the North Idaho Federated Republican Women, recently shared this artifact from the collection of Donna Montgomery, a timely addition to the exhibit.
Something that the men during the time of the fight for suffrage would wear as a lapel or a pocket piece, which is really interesting, and I had never heard of that.
Janet Gallimore is executive director and state historic preservation officer at the Idaho State Historical Society.
History, we find history all the time, and what I love about that is that history never stays static. It's not something that you look to the past and just say, okay, well, it was done. there's always new reveals, there's always new information, there's always new technology that allows us to see deeper into history and understand it better. And so it is something that evolves contemporarily with us and is here to provide us context. Look at how beautifully done it is, and it's in gorgeous shape, and it's got so much detail, very reminiscent of that time when women would have been doing a lot of handiwork and sewing and things of that nature. And so pretty big wow that it's still here and it's with us and it's been contributed to the state.
Idaho happens to be the 4th state to recognize women's suffrage, and this was a way that men would show their support by wearing a handkerchief in their pocket that said, "Votes for women."
And the general public is welcome to go into the entryway of the Idaho Secretary of State's office to go take a look at this brand new exhibit. And Brian, I thought you would think this is interesting. So the Secretary of State's office, when Phil McGrain took over, he made up these buttons that have the state seal on them. I'm sure you've seen them. Maybe you even have one. They ordered 1,500 of them, and they were shocked to find out how many people wanted them. They have given out 15,000 over the last few years.
Well, I was going to say, when you were saying people are welcome to go to that office, hope that entryway is a little bit bigger than maybe you might anticipate, because there might be a few people who want to walk through there.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's an official exhibit from the State Historical Society. And by the way, I also found out, if you need another reason to go down the Capitol, apparently each executive office has a different little treat. So that's the buttons in the Secretary of State's office. So you got to go find out what they all have. That's a pen from whose office?
And from the AG's office. There you go. Wow. All right, thanks, Joe. Well, the state seal, the essence of Emma Edwards' green design, has adorned official Idaho artifacts since nearly the beginning, as you heard. While it was the first official state seal, there were actually 2 other seals of Idaho before hers. One designed by a little-known clerk in the Territorial Secretary's office who would also have a short interim stint as governor. The other by a shady wanderer with D.C. connections. Throughout our country's history, when a territory was created, it also spawned a circular seal. You know, like with Kansas, Utah, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. In 1863, when President Abraham Lincoln signed the Idaho Territory into existence, a design by Silas Cochran was submitted and stood as our symbol for almost 3 years. That is, until Idaho's territorial governor at the time, Caleb Lyon, felt the eagle, the union, it needed a redo. So he did the redo himself, sketching out an idea with a ram atop a shield of mountains and a river over a banner with what looks like the word for ointment, but is actually Latin for hello, Solway. That seal morphed into something with an antlered animal, so no more ram, but the hello remained. Lyon's layout was accepted by the territorial legislature on January 11, 1866. But Lyon's legacy was about as sketchy as his sketch. In 1847, he was apparently appointed as a consul to Shanghai, which he skipped, and instead ended up in California, where he took credit for designing their state seal in 1849, which he didn't do. He followed that with a stint in the New York State Assembly, the U.S. Congress, and somehow managed to earn President Lincoln's appointment as Idaho's 2nd territorial governor in 1864. Oh yeah, Idaho's capital city moving from Lewiston to Boise? You can blame Lyon for that. A year later, after failing to find diamonds and supposedly stealing more than $40,000 meant for the Nez Perce tribe, Lyon left, saying goodbye or walye to Idaho instead of Solway.
Well, the sun is starting to set on our moody Monday. We had some light rain off and on today. Overcast skies slowly starting to give way to some clearing in some spots. We're still in the mid-50s in Boise, mid-40s up in the mountains. So another above average day every single day so far this month. We've been milder than is typical. So just clouds coming and going over the region. Again, moving from south to north. That's a direction of our mid-level flow and our surface winds as well, if there was any out there, which there's not really. We're pretty calm. Couple sprinkles lingering west of Boise, but that's about it. So maybe a little spot shower this evening, but for the most part, dry weather prevails through the evening. We'll drop into the 40s about 8 o'clock tonight. And as skies continue to clear and with all the moisture in the lower levels of the atmosphere, dense fog is a possibility tomorrow morning. So make sure you mind your following distance, your speeds, and of course, keep the low beams on if you encounter that fog. But after it lifts, we have a beautiful Tuesday coming our way. Lots of sunshine. We will wake up to upper 30s, low 40s. So it will be a foggy and crisp Tuesday morning, but temperatures in the afternoon warm again into above average territory, mid-50s. From Ontario through Boise out to Twin Falls, we will see foggy conditions early on in the mountains, highs there in the 40s and low 50s. After that, we have very quiet conditions for the rest of the week and on into the weekend. Slight chance of a shower on Thursday. I don't think it'll amount to a whole lot. Temperatures settle in the mid-50s in the Boise area, morning lows in the mid-30s. We see our next system coming in all the way into early next week.
Well, Thanksgiving a little more than a week away. Local nonprofits are doing everything they can to make sure families are going to have the food they need to enjoy the holidays. And you got to have a pitch to play, which is what Athletic Club Boise now has, a little more than 4 months from their first match. Here's Richard Rodriguez with today's 411.
Stacy Wandra, the man accused of kidnapping and killing Michael Vaughn, had his arraignment hearing in Payette County this morning. Wandra appeared for the hearing virtually. Court records show he's charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, destruction of evidence, and a persistent violator charge. Law enforcement extradited Wandra from Arizona, where he's been serving time for unrelated charges. Earlier this month, we learned law enforcement served Wandra's warrant related to the disappearance and death of Michael. Then 5-year-old Michael went missing in July of 2021 from outside his home in Fruitland. St. Vincent de Paul's is working overtime to help with meal boxes for as many families as possible. Those boxes are filled with everything for a Thanksgiving dinner, including potatoes, butter, and of course the turkey. While registration to get a box is now closed, there is still time to help neighbors in need. The nonprofit is still accepting donation and volunteers to fill these boxes. We have a link to donate and to sign up to volunteer in this story on ktvb.com. Everyone that has registered for a meal box will be able to pick those up at their assigned time at the Small Animal Barn at Expo Idaho next Monday, November 24th. The turf is down over the old Les Boys racetrack at Expo Idaho, now home to Boise's first professional soccer team, AC Boise. You can also see the stadium seating has been installed on the southeast side of the stadium, as well as in front of the grandstand seats, which has since been painted green. Earlier this month, the team announced former Real Salt Lake assistant coach Nate Miller will be the team's first head coach. The team is holding closed tryouts next week and have yet to announce any player sightings. Earlier this year, the team broke the USL record for the most season ticket deposits taken in league history. AC Boise is set to kick off their inaugural season in March. And that's the 401 on the 208. I'm Richard Rodriguez.
All right, David in Boise County has a question about the proposed rebuilding of the Teton Dam. He says, I wonder how much of the projected water need is for mega data centers. Well, since most of the data centers are in the Treasure Valley, at that point, building something in eastern Idaho, probably not. Will we be building dams to store water, rain or snow melt that may be diminishing over the coming decades, says Phil in Boise? It's a very good question. That's not the only one to ask that question either. We'll have to wait and see, but I guess the more we store, the better, right? See you tomorrow.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.